Hello, this is Devlin McGuire. This is not actually one of my first theories. I have made a ton of theories, like an absurd number of theories before this. This is just one of them from like a very long time ago. I think like a year ago, maybe. I just never got a chance to put it into a video, and I thought I would make it into a video. So here it is. This is probably one of my first ones that I'm putting a ton of effort into, I guess, for a video. Aside from the 2, 3, 4 hour one that I put out, but nobody wants to watch that because it's so long. You're like Molly Stars, but whatever. So let's look at this from a perspective, from a religious perspective on Deltarune. There is an angel canonically in the religion of Deltarune, and in Undertale. So in this case, who would be the god in that case? In Undertale, we see Azrael is the supreme god of hyperdeath, or at least that's what he calls himself. But really, he looks more akin to an angel depicted on the cave walls in the prophecy, like with Gerson and whatnot. But from another perspective, if you're not doing pacifist, who would be considered an angel? Well, another one would be the angel of death that sets all of the monsters free. This would be a lot closer to Kara, considering that on the genocide route, we more or less become Kara. Or Kara takes over our body, I guess. So from this perspective, let's just establish the idea that God is probably the player, probably us, and the angel is whatever enacts our will. Or like how messengers of, back in religion, a lot of religions, were the highest possible being on the charter, aside from God himself, because they enact messages and will of God. So let's just assume it's something like that. Yeah, so looking at the context, there are multiple angels that are in heaven in Christianity. Oh, it's banishing heaven. In Deltarune, that is, we're trying to banish heaven. If we're banishing the angels' heaven, where the player is God, and the movable character, or vessel, depending on if it's Chris or the vessel, is our angels, that means that the angels' heaven is probably something that the player and or the angel wants to make happen. I hope that's clear. So the heaven is just something that we and or our vessel wants to make happen. I say and or because technically we're talking about different entities which could have different alignments. Like how we are mostly neutral, or we could be pacifist, or we could do a genocide in Undertale. So while our intentions could be aligned, they also might not necessarily be aligned. Another alternate interpretation is that Des is the angel, if we are assuming that she is the voice trapped in the code, and her heaven is wherever she is trapped. Maybe. Considering that in Deltarune on the genocide route, the player/god gets bored and kills everyone, with the rebellious Kara taking our control away, because that is essentially what's happening, by erasing the world of Undertale, and leaving it as a pitch-black void with Howling Wind. I'll get on Howling Wind a whole different day. So maybe Des somehow went through something similar, and her erased world is her heaven, if that makes sense. In which case, the trend shows that the current angel will be trying to create their own heaven, air quote, that's free from the player, if that makes sense. If it's the angel's heaven, not necessarily God's heaven, which would be kind of like the player's, then maybe that's something free of the player. Seeing how there are other worlds in Undertale, indicated by the man from the other world line from the Riverboat Man, who says, "Beware of the man from the other world," which I am assuming to be Sans. Sans only stopping us on the only route where we can't reset, and having knowledge to find people capable of erasing the world, EXP and love, and the fact that there are goners that already don't exist, in a way. It means that an Undertale world was erased before the events of Undertale, which would perfectly explain the mystery behind Sans. And that way, because then we could just say that Sans came from whatever previous world that was erased. Does that make sense? I hope I'm making sense here. I don't want to lose anybody. And if there is a parallel in Deltarune, that means that the angels heaven, or that the angel in every universe, through one means or another, have a tendency to erase the world that they are in. And with Chris opening up a dark fountain after just being told that that will end the world, it looks like Chris may be the angel we're talking about. In fact, in Undertale, Kara tells us not that they have decided to be evil or even working against the player, but that they found their purpose. Keyword on purpose. And Kara doesn't care if we actually want to erase the world or not. They've already decided that it is going to happen no matter what we want. In Undertale, Kara tells us not that they've decided to be evil or are even working against the player, but just that they found their purpose, with the keyword on purpose. And Kara doesn't care if we actually want to erase the world too or not. They've already decided that it is going to happen no matter what we want. And yet we are Kara's partner, air quote. At least we are a partner unless we, decide to say do not. You know what I mean. And yet, Kara talks about Undertale like it matters, but says that we will simply move on to the next. If Undertale Sans' world is erased, and Noelle's world is erased, at least potentially, and if we decide to do a genocide in Undertale, causing the world to be erased, and Deltarune outright acknowledges that there's a potential world-ending threat on the rise, that means that we are essentially playing as some kind of multiversal entity that's capable of taking over people's bodies like Cthulhu or whatever, with the modulation of living out a controlled person's life and go on an adventure, essentially. If that makes sense. Because so far we've seen at least one account and at most 3 accounts, which would indicate to me at least that it is not beyond the realm of comprehension that it could happen again in Deltarune. But we coincidentally also exist alongside another entity like ourselves that's erasing universes with our help. Because we are not doing that. We are not saying we want Undertale to be erased. That is always Kara, but we always allow for that to happen. We bring the world to its breaking point. So essentially, Kara gained motivation to erase the world when their stats hit level 20. Meaning that whenever the player helps a character reach level 20, this will probably also happen. Which brings me to Chris. Well, I'll get to that a different day, I guess, but in other words, we are helping a self-emergent being, or cosmic horror, or whatever you want to call it, be birthed into the world. And we do this repeatedly in different worlds, but it's probably either the same entity or different ones with the same theme, if that makes sense. Because level 20 being the idea of level of violence or hate or something else like that essentially applies a theme onto something else, if that makes sense. So you can still have a same character, even if it's different characters, if that makes sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting off track and I'm just being stupid, but so let's just stick to the basics of my theory. I don't want to cloud it with more jumbled stuff than I need to. We are helping a self-emergent being, or cosmic horror, or whatever, to be birthed, resulting in the end of the world before moving on to another. And we may be playing as the entity which causes this to happen. That might be our place in the storyline in a non-diegetic sense, or not in a non-metaphysical sense within the story, if that makes sense. Because if Sans' world is already erased, then that means that took place without the player involved. Unless time works differently and we'll see 2 more games or 1 more game where Sans' world was erased or whatever, but you get my point. Probably not. So it's possible that, reason why I say Sans' old world ceased to exist, why that one was erased. The reason that I believe this is because in both Undertale and Deltarune, which parallel each other, you have 2 probably different Sanses. People theorize that Undertale Sans could be Deltarune Sans or vice versa, but I don't think that's the case. If in both worlds both of them show up randomly out of nowhere, like one didn't just exist and move to the other with a whole backstory, both of them just popped into existence somewhere along the lines and asserted themselves into the community, that tells me that the man from the other world implies a completely different world aside from Undertale and Deltarune. Probably not the Dark World. People want to say the Dark World, but I mean like a different universe entirely. And then Sans asserts himself after that world, moving into the main canon world, which is what I'm going to call the general concept of both Undertale and Deltarune, since they're kind of the same but different, but parallels of each other. So that's my theory for today. I'm sorry if it was short or disappointing, but I just wanted to bang it out of the way and get it out of the way. I hope you guys like this. This is probably my first time iterating this theory on a video. This is different from a different theory I'm going to be making in the future about Bismuth Moth, but Bismuth Moth, that one will come later. I just wanted to get this one out of the way.
What? Sans Undertale go into my eyes.
What the fuck?
Solo time! Did you know this piano is made out of your girlfriend's flesh?